Welcome to episode 251 of the DFO Rundown. I'm Jason Greger. As always, it's brought to you by Betano. The game starts now. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Betano.ca. I know that it's been hit or miss on the NHL. Lots of games one night, very few the next night. Well, that's going to even out a little bit here starting in November. So I have way more opportunities. Of course, NBA. You got your Monday, Thursday, and Sunday nights for the NFL. Check it all out at Betano.ca. As we welcome in Frank Saravalli once again. And Frank, there's lots to discuss. Of course, the big topic is the Ottawa Senators, who have been punished for, I guess, not divulging a no trade list for Dadonov from something that stems back in July of 2021.
March 2022 is when it.
Well, that's when he got traded, but originally they traded him in July of 21, right? So supposedly that's when they were supposed to say it. So, I've talked to a few other, capologists and stuff, and there's a lot of people that have questions, Frank, because in typical NHL fashion, they send out a press release that doesn't explain very much, and, then reporters have to dig into it. So what have you uncovered here? Did Dorion basically just withhold information?
So it's usually not the GM that does the trade call. It's usually one of the assistant GMs that goes through it. Sometimes the GM is on the line. I don't think in this case it specifically was Pierre Dorion personally. Okay. And what we had here and what unfolded was a 73-page report that amazingly didn't come for 591 days after the 2022 trade deadline, when the trade of Evegenii Dadonov from Vegas to Anaheim was invalidated by the league. Yeah. Why it took that long, as Michael Andlauer asked the question, beyond me. This is a 2-day hearing process. I don't know what the lawyers that work for the NHL or around the NHL get paid, but I imagine it's a princely hourly sum. And it's surprising to me that it took this long to come together. So the end result is kind of simple to formulate. It's when the trade happened from Ottawa to Vegas on the call, and the league has record of this. The Vegas Golden Knights asked, is there anything to be aware of as far as a no trade clause? Do you have a list? And they were told no. And so the Sens did not provide info on the clause or the list. And that sort of began the spiral, which then resulted in that later trade, 8 months later, from being nullified. So it was a tough spot for the Golden Knights to be in. The Ducks were unhappy that they didn't get a second round pick as part of that trade. The Golden Knights were mad and miffed at the time that they not only didn't get the cap relief that they needed at the deadline, but also wore the embarrassment of making it seem like they didn't have their stuff together by not having the list. And all the blowback came on the Sens. The problem for Michael Andlauer, now owning the team and only owning the team for 40 days, is he's now had to deal with two really embarrassing punishments from the NHL, neither one which he had any link to, and also apparently didn't have very much knowledge of.
So Frank, I just want to recap. So the Ottawa Senators got punished a first round selection in 24, 25, 26 for not divulging.
Yep.
Yeah, one of those years, for not divulging all the information. Correct? That's essentially what it was.
Correct.
And so, by the way, the NHL just sold the Ottawa Senators to Michael Andlauer, and during the sale, didn't divulge all the information they knew that was ongoing about the Ottawa Senators organization. They didn't tell him about this. They didn't tell him about the Shane Pinto investigation. Like, doesn't it seem hypocritical?
I think it's important to point out that no, he did not know about the Shane Pinto investigation that had been ongoing since the summer. But he said, if you read through the transcript, and I have the audio on my phone, he said he did know, as part of a due diligence process, about an ongoing investigation with regards to this punishment that might be coming, but he had zero clue as to the severity of it. And I think that severity of it is what caught everyone by surprise this week. You're thinking kind of maybe, hey, the Ducks didn't get a second round pick. Maybe that's what the punishment is here. To go to a first rounder seems a little bit draconian in terms of that punishment, heavy-handed. And so his point was the previous ownership group, the group selling the team, thought that this was an immaterial issue. And his answer to that was, I don't know about you guys if you think that first round picks are a non-issue, but there's something to me. And that was really kind of the source of his frustration. I mean, put yourself in his shoes, right? This bidding process to get the Sens goes on forever.
Yeah.
There's this last round of bidding that no one really understands even why are they bidding against themselves, topping up their own bids, when, at least to my knowledge, one of the three finalists to get the team was a total sham to begin with. And so I'm sure that Michael Andlauer is sitting there feeling today like he got bilked out of an extra $100 million at the end, milk, squirt, squirt, and all of a sudden ends up with a team that, now 40 days in has to deal with two different black eyes that have been, made it seem like this team and the start that they're off to under him is dysfunctional when he really has nothing to do with it.
Well, and I just, what, I look at a lot of the decisions lately under Gary Bettman. So Ottawa gets punished like this for a first round selection, right? In one of those 3 years, which is pretty significant. The investigation of the Kyle Beach, what did Chicago get fined?
$2.5 million.
Yeah. So $2.5 million for $1 billion team or a first round pick. What hurts them more, do you think, realistically, right? So,
well, that first round pick, by the way, might have been Connor Bedard. I mean, think about it. We don't know which year they would have been forced to cough up. They could have very well
that's my
been
point.
Connor Bedard.
Exactly. Right. So that's my point, is covering up abuse like that gets you less of a punishment in theory for hurting your organization than not divulging a no trade list. And I'm not excusing, like, I'd love to know why the Sens. Now, did a guy just have a brain fart and forget? And then that's it. Like, I talked to a few agents, Frank, who said, you know what, if you think your player is going to get traded, you have a conversation with the GM. And most agents know that there's a no trade list. Like, there's obviously some.
It was on Tap Friendly. It said that Evegenii Dadonov, I believe it said that he had a 10-team no trade list.
So that's my point here. Like, this is something that I'm not saying it's an innocent mistake. Like, if you just flat out lied, you deserve to be punished. There's no question. But it seemed like this was something that others could have figured out. And now the Ottawa Senators, 20 months after the actual trade was voided, like, are paying the price. Like, this should have happened in April or May of 2022 and be done with.
Well, that was kind of my point, is why wasn't this justice meted out earlier? It should, the fact that it didn't, and it almost seemed like they were saving it until they got to the other side of this sale. That's what's really disappointing.
Honestly, I'm at the point, Frank, I think, you know what? And I know that the owners are going to look and say, you know what? He's made us a lot of money. I just think the tenure of Gary Bettman, it's time for a change. I just think he's too power hungry, where he thinks he can do whatever he wants, however he wants. They don't have to explain anything because it's Sir Gary Bettman. And I think it's not good for the league, because it's happened in numerous occasions where I don't think the punishment has fit the crime. You look at Chicago, you look at what they did in Shane Pinto. There's no explanation whatsoever. How they do about a lot of their business. I just think it's time. I think it's way too much of, well, I can do whatever I want with my inner group of people, and and I don't think it's better for the players, and I really don't think it's better for the fans.
So let me play devil's advocate for a second, and I'm not defending anyone here. And if you've listened to me, you know that I don't have a dog in any fight. Isn't his job to squeeze out the very best price that he can for the franchise?
Not if you want to do it by being lying or withholding information and then punishing teams for doing the same thing. If you set a precedent that it's, guess what? We can do whatever it takes to get the most money without any moral upstanding. To me, that's an issue.
I think that's a fair point. I'm just saying, if at the end of the day, you are the Melnick estate or you are another team in a similar spot that has their franchise that ends up being sold, aren't you thrilled? Isn't that really all that matters? He can take the bullets. He can take the bullets and doesn't care. It goes off of him like water off of a duck's back. Because at the end of the day, the people that write his check, the people that employ him, are thrilled that that's the end result.
Well, to me,
we get lost in this because we think, oh, this is what's for the good of the game. This is what's for whatever whatever state, whatever case you want. But he doesn't work for the fans. He's made it clear time and time again that he doesn't.
Okay, here's the point.
We wouldn't have multiple lockouts. We wouldn't have, multiple things that pop up. He knows who he works for. And that's it.
I don't discount that. So then you're saying, so if all they work for is we don't care on any moral standing, because let's be honest, had you told Andlauer about these situations, how much lower would the price tag have been realistically?
My guess is not at all.
So that's my point. So what does it change? Everybody out there will tell their kids, don't lie. You don't lie. It's the worst thing to do to lie. So but it's like, well, hey, let me finish. If you can make more billions of dollars or millions of dollars in a sale, well, then it's okay to lie. That's bullshit. It's utter bullshit. And you can't have a commissioner standing at the top of your league saying, we're going to sell a maximum price. And if we have to mislead people in buying it, as you said, put out a sham of a bidder to make it look like it's better. That's awful. And eventually big sponsors are going to say, why do you want to deal with this? Because trust me, there's lots of other people that you can deal with. They're above board.
So what I would say to that is, one, you're taking it as fact that the league is lying or not being on the up and up and fully clear.
Well, did they know? Andlauer said he didn't know about the Pinto situation.
Correct. But he did know that there was an ongoing investigation, but they didn't tell him about the severity of this punishment with regards to the Dadonov trade.
So again, not telling the full story.
But we also didn't give them a chance to respond. And here's kind of what my big issue is there's such a lack of transparency when it comes to all of it that I think is my biggest problem here. They send out a one-sentence statement essentially on Shane Pinto's suspension and say the league will have no further comment. They send out the statement about the Dadonov pick forfeiture and then say the league will have no further comment. I'm not afraid, me, to put on my hard hat, dig in and do the work and get the details and the reporting as to what exactly went on here. And I've written full stories. You can read them on dailyfaceoff.com. All the background you could possibly want to know about the Dadonov situation and how it played out. But when you have an owner that's new to the table and isn't even really new to the table. I've been going to Board of Governors meetings for a long time now. Michael Andlauer has been in those meetings as minority owner of the Montreal Canadiens for a long time. The fact that he took the NHL and the commissioner to the woodshed publicly on Wednesday gives you some sort of indication as to, one, what true transparency is, because he said point blank, the Ottawa Senators are going to be transparent. And two, just further insight into how we've gotten to this point of, because the league says it's so, that's the way that it is. And there's really no pushback or question. And that, I think, is the most disappointing part, is almost everyone seems to just get in line. Look at the NHLPA. They're guilty of it too. Look at this Pinto situation. Because the commissioner says it's 41 games, we're just going to roll over and take it. I know that they were part of the investigation, and the answer from the PA would have been, hey, well, it could have been 82 games, and then we could have gotten a neutral arbitrator, and he maybe would have knocked it down to 41. You just allowed the league to set precedent here without any pushback. And public or not, that's the statement that you essentially gave off, is we're willing to just bend the knee. And I think that's a really troubling aspect of the way this league operates right now, is there's this fear of stepping out and saying something. I mean, there's even question this morning, will the Sens be fined? Will they be whatever? Will they get slapped for being as honest and open as they were on Wednesday?
Yeah, which leads back to my original point. Who runs the circus? Right? Gary Bettman's the one who allows it as the commissioner. And he's also the one who oversaw the debacle of the whole Pride tape situation recently that, this is what we're going to do. They don't put any thought into it. And all it takes is one player, not even a superstar player of your team, Travis Dermott, to say, pound sand, I'm going to use it. And, oh, geez, now we're going to revert our decision on that one. Meanwhile, you know what? There's no cancer nights or anything like that, at least to the same vein because of it. Like,
yeah, you
to
see
me,
players walk into the arena wearing the jerseys as their way to enter the building because that's the only way they can do it.
Like, to me, it's just it's a string of things that just add up, and you have an inner circle of owners and Gary Bettman who think, well, we can just run things however we want it for a long time. And to me, he just looks drunk with power, and I think it's time for a change.
So I guess my question is, who's going to step out and do it?
I think there's lots of people, and Frank, further to your point about the Ottawa sham, I think there'd be lots of people who would love to be a commissioner of the National Hockey League who have lots of experience.
No, I don't mean do
levels.
the job. I mean, who's going to ultimately force the hand and say, after 30 some years, time's up?
Yeah, it's a fair question.
That's really the only
where it starts. It starts honestly with more media people not being compliant and say, hey, here's the facts. These are the things, and call it out. Because Gary Bettman, he'll lie to your face, Frank. He lied directly to my face in the NHL playoffs when I asked him about start time. Oh, I have the sheets right in front of me. The NHL website tells you the start time of every game. This is not an opinion. This is a fact. It's right there. And he lied bold-faced when I asked him, why are your start times all over? No, we started 07 and 37. It's bullshit. No, you don't. And here's the thing. That is a very simple thing. MLB announces game starts first pitch 107, and they start at 107. NFL games start on time. This is not a hard thing to do. It's just another small thing that Gary Bettman's like, well, who cares? Our fans, they don't care. We'll start at 07, 015, 22. No, it's amateur hour, and the commissioner allows it. It would be very simple to say, teams, your puck drop is 7:07. Simple. I saw when they have ceremonies, they have it down to the minute of what they want to do. This is not difficult. And he just doesn't do it. And to me, it just adds up, a lot of little things that add up. The NHL has not grown remotely the same as other leagues. When you look at their salary cap, you look at the amount of
they don't want to.
Everything else.
Why would they have to? Look at what they pay players, and I know it's all relative to total revenue.
Yeah.
But look at what they pay players relative to franchise valuation and how that's grown. They've had the Ottawa Senators, a team that 5 years ago was considered the 28th most valuable team in the league, just reached nearly $1 billion.
Yeah, hey, that's great. But if we never point it out and everybody just goes along like sheep and everything's great, I think it's a problem to me.
That's not what I do.
I'm not saying you.
That's what the rest of the landscape appears to do. Even just look at the way the press conference yesterday was covered. I didn't see very many tweets with some of the most damning quotes pumped out.
Yeah, well, that's my point. If everybody becomes compliant, and so there needs to be more. But Gary Bettman, I'm sorry, it's done. I have no respect for somebody who bold-faced lies on many different occasions. Lying's not acceptable. It's the most simple, basic thing we teach our kids. It's not acceptable in business just because it's a sport. That's all I'm saying.
My only answer to that is there is first off, we don't know I'm not defending him, but I'm saying in reply to that is we don't know everything because of the lack of transparency. And two, I think lying is a different step. It's a version of lying, but not being entirely transparent is a different thing.
Sure, but misleading, not telling him that.
Perhaps misleading. Maybe his response to that would be, I didn't make up my mind in terms of what the punishment would be until last week.
Well, but the
report was completed, but maybe he didn't make up his mind until then.
Sure. They never mentioned the Shane Pinto investigation. So that's withholding information, which is essentially lying, right? Are you giving us everything when we're going through a buying process?
Maybe his response. I'm just playing devil's advocate because you know that he always, there's an answer for everything. So you know that there's going to be an answer coming, and maybe the answer would be we were still in the fact-finding mission with regards to Shane Pinto and weren't at any point able to say anything because of the ongoing investigation and didn't want to tip anyone off. I don't know what the answer is. There has to be some sort of reason. There has to be some sort of process that the league goes through that ends up where they do. I don't think I don't, regardless of whatever you think of him or what anyone else thinks of him and how this league operates, I don't believe that they just get out of bed in the morning and willy-nilly wake up and, oh, let's just do this today. I do think there actually is a process. I just think at times it goes awry.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Gary Bettman has a track record of misleading people in direct answers, not telling the truth, and then just moving on from it. That's like, I can go through 10 years. I don't want to recap history, but it's a fact. It's happened way too often. And to me, it's just, it just keeps adding on and it's only getting worse. It's not getting better. Like the punishment comparable for the Blackhawks to this Ottawa Senators thing is revolting to me. That's all.
Kudos to Michael Andlauer for being as honest and transparent as he was.
Yeah, like if you're a Sens fan, you should be loving your new owner. And hopefully he's the new age owner that will have a little bit more of a focus saying, you know what, we can make all the money. I have no problem with capitalism. You want to make all your money, but there's still a certain set of values and morals you should have while you do it. So I think the NHL has teetered on the brink of really not showing those. And in lots of cases have shown they don't have it. At least to a level that I would deem acceptable. So we'll see. To the ice, Frank. I guess you've talked about this beforehand, but now Steve Staois, who no shock, he's the interim GM, which I think might become the full-time GM at some point. A la Kyle Dubas, we'll see. Maybe not. But DJ Smith. Now you don't have Dorion, who was the guy who hired you. How much longer do you think DJ Smith has? Like if the Sens all of a sudden find themselves, even 500 at the end of November, is that enough? Does he's got to be above 500, does he not?
Yeah, I think there's real pressure for him to get this team finally moving in the right direction. What I would say is if there's any indication that his seat is hot, Steve Staois didn't tip his hand on Wednesday. In fact, professed support for DJ Smith. And
you know what that means, Frank? How many GMs have professed
it wasn't
for a coach?
It wasn't outward like that. In fact, it was very I found it very confidence inspiring. Like, usually when you have a GM or president of hockey ops asked about the coach and they say, well, we haven't made any decisions yet. And you hear like the yet at the end of it and you're like, yeah, I mean, like you just told us that you're thinking about it. I don't get the sense that this is something that's pretty high on their priority list. And one of the things that he said that supported that was that players have never cheated us in effort under DJ Smith. And so that I think has been a huge positive for DJ Smith at this point. But in the end, the results speak for themselves, and the Sens in what is a big year for them and is already obviously off to a rocky start, they could use some wins.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Hey, speaking of using wins,
I also, by the way, just to put a bow on the Ottawa talk, I do think there was so much talk about Peter Chiarelli on Wednesday. I'm not saying it won't happen, but when we were at the Board of Governors meeting less than a month ago, it was like 28 days ago, talked to Michael Andlauer and asked about Peter Chiarelli. And he said at the time, and Chiarelli, as a reminder, is a senior VP for the St. Louis Blues. He said that Chiarelli had reached out, and obviously being an Ottawa native has tons of connections to Ottawa. But this was 4 weeks ago, said that they hadn't had a chance to connect. So I'm with you. Steve Staois did not talk at all yesterday like a man who seems to be in a rush to find a GM. And I think he's perfectly comfortable, even though Michael Andlauer mentioned the idea that he likes having a two-headed monster running his hockey ops in GM and president, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him hang on to the title as GM.
Yeah. Speaking of needing wins, the Calgary Flames have lost 6 in a row. They're 2-7-1 in their first 10. Now, Jake Ottinger played great last night, right? Stopped 43 of 46. So it wasn't necessarily lack of playing poorly that cost them that one. Other games, you can definitely say that has been the case. But, you look at them, they're now 7 points behind the Anaheim Ducks, who sit in 4th place in the Pacific Division. The Ducks are rolling. They're gotten the exact opposite. They've won 5 in a row. How concerned are you about the Flames? Is this on a scale of 1 to 10, where would your concern be for the Flames that, they might dig themselves too deep of a hole?
I would say it is a 7. 1 to 10.
1 to 10. Because I went back and looked at the last few seasons. There hasn't been a team that started 2-7-1 that made the playoffs. That's I think it's a lot, especially when you consider the Ducks are playing great. And I think some of us think, okay, the Ducks will slow down a bit. Okay, that's fair. But most people also believe what the Edmonton Oilers will, I know they're
I was just going to say the Oilers have the same number of points and are 2-5-1.
They have 2 games in hand, and they've got a pretty favorable schedule coming up. I won't be surprised if Edmonton goes 4-1. And the difference is Edmonton's been a really good team for a long time. They're a good team who's played poorly. Calgary missed the playoffs last year, and we can say goaltending and everything else, sure. And there's the coach, but I don't put them in the same category of skill as Edmonton. And, I think Edmonton has a much better chance and probably will turn their season around here very quickly. But Calgary, man, their top guys, Frank, are some real MIA guys right now. And that's a big problem.
If we're talking pure math, the math is still pretty doable. I mean, what you're looking at is the Flames needing 91 points over the final 72 games. So it's 45 wins or the equivalent of that.
Yeah.
I mean, the math is 45 and 72. It's possible.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult, right?
But my issue is more the eye test. It's not the math is daunting. It's what can we point to and hang our hat on and say, here's what the Flames have done. Here's what they have going for them that you can say, oh yeah, I see the path for them to get there. And now that we've arrived at this point where the Flames have basically halted all contract negotiations with their pending UFAs. I mean, to me, it's a 2-part thing. You not only have players now that are sitting here going, I don't know if this is the place that it makes sense to re-sign, but you also have management taking a step back saying, hold on, do we need to change course here and not just not re-sign some of our guys, but also kind of begin to use one of the R words, retool, rebuild a little, whatever it might be. Can we get sign off from ownership to do things in a different way than maybe we had envisioned based on what the plan was when we took over this team in June?
Yeah, no, it's fair. Now, Frank, I quickly looked it up. So you mentioned 45 wins in the last 72 games. Doable, yes. Last season, 5 teams won 45 games in their last 72. New Jersey won 45, Carolina 46, Carolina and Toronto 46, Colorado 47, and then Boston, of course, was crazy. They won 56, which we all know is the greatest season ever. Pretty hard to do. So if you think the Flames can be the Leafs, Avalanche, Hurricanes, or Devils of last year, then they got a chance. Otherwise, if you're in Calgary, you can argue that their hole is so deep already that they can't recover from that.
I could see you making the argument. I guess I'm just not there yet.
Yeah. Okay.
They're a 4 or 5 game winning streak away from being back in the conversation.
Potentially. So
not potentially, it's fact. I mean, that's what it would be.
Yeah, but you got it. Right. They've lost 6 in a row, right? What
I understand.
I'll give them credit. They actually
see the standings, and I have watched the games.
Yeah, Jake Ottinger played really well, but sometimes it's a weird thing, man. Momentum works good one way. It can also work very poorly for you the other way. And quickly, what about the Ducks? Mr. Cronin has come in, and you know what? They've getting contributions. Troy Terry had the hat trick, including the overtime winner last night. Leo Carlson scored his 3rd goal in 6 games. Mason McTavish has been very good.
Frank Vatrano, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I give Anaheim, man. Like, I know it's short, and I don't expect them to make the playoffs, but man, they're off to a pretty competitive start. Like, they look good. They don't look like they're just winning because their goalie, you know what, like is making 50 saves a night and standing on his head.
I agree. They've been really good. We'll see. What does it ultimately mean at the end of the day? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd still be surprised, to be honest, if they make the playoffs. But like they've got a lot of young guys, and Trevor Zegras has really yet to show up there. So like, even if Anaheim,
come on, you're not actually like what would you give their playoff chances right now?
Oh, I would still say they're a playoff team for Anaheim. I'd still probably have it at like 15%. But my point is, they're a pretty young team. So, part of the process is to at least play some meaningful games in March, right? Where the things ratchet. If they can stick around, Frank, and at least because last year they weren't even close, right? Like, it was a done season by November 15th.
But that's arguably what is necessary for this team. Like, I just view each additional win as another way to bleep yourself.
You don't think they have enough good young players to start retooling and being competitive?
No.
All right.
The Chicago Blackhawks don't feel like that, and I think they're ahead of Anaheim.
Oh, I don't think so. How? Just because of Bedard?
Yeah, you could say just because of Bedard, but if you think Bedard is going to be the next closest thing to McDavid, then I think, yeah, you're pretty much further ahead. I mean, you're also forgetting Kevin Korchinski is in the lineup. Like, they've got a whole bunch of guys that are going to be hanging around that, you're checking different positional boxes.
Yeah. Well, the one thing about, here's the key about Anaheim, Frank, is when you look at key positions you need, I think, to be successful, is Luka Dostal the guy? Can he, because if you get a really good goaltender, he's 23. If you get a good goaltender, because it's not like John Gibson's being the guy here in Anaheim. He's 1-3. Dostal's 5-1 with the 9.
That's kind of what I was going to say about how, we can praise the Ducks and this 5-game winning streak, and I'm not taking anything away from them. They still started 1-4. And even at their current pace, as good as they've been to this point, they're on track for 98 points, which would be a fringe playoff team. So it's...
Well, 98 would be pretty, like, you're 98 points. You're guaranteed a playoff spot. You're not going to be winning the division.
You're 7th or 8th.
Yeah.
At 98 points.
But you've never missed them, is my point.
But what I'm saying is they started 1-4. This is just one team on a hot run.
Yeah. Or is it now that they have a goalie? Because look at who was in net for most of those games when they lost.
So I'm way more interested in talking about the Bruins.
Okay.
Who are looking to keep their season opening point streak at 10 games on Thursday night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm wondering if we just don't give David Pastrnak enough love. Have we even mentioned him on the pod this season? 8 goals in 9 games.
Yeah.
60 goals last year. Like, honestly, is he the best player that no one really even talks about all that much?
It's a fair point. Yeah, he's we talked about him lots last year. Like, Pastrnak, dynamic player. And I think what he's showing is he's dynamic without Patrice Bergeron, right? Like, Patrice Bergeron benefited from Pastrnak as much as maybe Pastrnak benefited from Bergeron, right? It wasn't just because I would hear, Pastrnak can be offensive because Bergeron is he's the defensive conscience. And I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily always believe that, right? Sure, Bergeron is elite defensively. There's no question. He's a good two-way player too, but you're right about Pastrnak, man. The guy, he can shoot the puck, man, and he shoots it a lot. Like, yeah, I love it. That guy is not afraid to shoot the puck.
It's crazy. 42 shots to this point. It's not by far, but it's right up there in terms of the league lead. McKinnon 49, Eichel 42, Austin Matthews 40. There's so few play driving wingers, and he's one of them.
That's fair.
There's so few guys that you can point to on the wing and say that guy is the straw stirring the drink, and he's one.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see Boston, because I think we'd all agree, Frank, that if they can add a center by the deadline, I think it'd be easy to put them in the conversation of legit cup contender because of their defense, because they're goaltending.
Hold on a second. Why wouldn't they be in that conversation right now? You don't think
Because
they're a legitimate cup
I don't think
contender
there's
right
if
now?
you look at cup winning teams, I don't think their center depth is good enough.
I mean, doesn't 8-0-1 speak for itself? Like, count them out at your own peril. Their defense and their goaltending is so elite. They might not need it.
Okay, but 65 wins didn't get you a playoff win last year either. Is my point. Like, it's great that they have a good start. For me, I think they need to
like a
improve their
cheap
center
tent in a
position.
soft wind.
Yeah, like they need to have a better center iceman for me to have them as a legit competitor for the cup in the playoffs. If they win in the playoffs with this roster, Frank, could they win a round? Sure. Could they win two? Maybe. I don't think they'd go to the cup final with that center ice position. I just don't think so. And I think they're aware of it. And I think you watch. I think they'll look to address it.
Well, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, of course they're going to look to address the center position, but I think it's a reach right now if you're not putting them in the cup contender category. They're not among the 7 teams in the league that you think could win the Stanley Cup right now.
Well, right now, sure, but that can change. Like, it's like people saying, is Edmonton not a cup contender because they've had a bad 8 games? I think too often we love to make like hot take knee-jerk reactions after 8 or 10 games. I like Boston. I think they're really good. I just don't. Their center ice position, the roster they have today, Frank, is not winning the cup. I don't think they have a chance to win the cup with that center ice position is all I'll say.
I'd say with their .940 save percentage goaltending and very elite mobile defensemen that you're counting them out.
Yeah, but are they going to play the same goalie in the playoffs, Frank?
I think they should play both goalies in the playoffs.
Well, it's another
I think that's one of the lessons they learned from last year.
Yeah, very fair. Let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk. Ty, how you doing?
Good. Always enjoy sitting back and listening to an episode of the DFO Rundown where you guys argue about things for 35 minutes. Spicy one today, boys, on a Thursday. Hello. All right. I'll try to keep the energy going here with a new edition of Buy or Sell. It is delivered by our friends at DoorDash. Don't let the holidays get ahead of you. If you're running out of times to run errands, go grocery shopping, and cook that delicious meal, it doesn't have to be this hard. Make DoorDash your holiday hack. And for a limited time, our Canadian listeners can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when they download the DoorDash app and use the promo code that's up at the top of your screen. If you're watching on YouTube, Nation25. One piece of news from this week you guys did not hit on yet. Nicholas Backstrom going to be taking some time away from the sport. It's kind of expected. This is maybe the end of the line for Backstrom. Over 1,000 points, 82nd all-time in NHL scoring. Nicholas Backstrom, first ballot Hall of Famer. Buy or sell, Frank?
Man, I've thought about this a lot over the last couple of days, and I think my answer is yes. And he doesn't have any of the individual hardware. He doesn't have, there's no Selke, there's no Conn Smythe, there's nothing that you can point to and say, oh, that is super elite. But and I guess the other part of this is you need someone on the other end to deposit all those goals that you're dishing out on pucks. But for a generation, Nicholas Backstrom was one of the 3-5 best playmakers in the game. And I think there's room for someone like that. The thing that trips me up about your question is he first ballot? I'm going to say no to first ballot, but I think yes, Hall of Famer. Is that fair?
I just think if you're at this point, the league's been around for well over 100 years. If you get into the top 100 in scoring, clearly you were elite for a long time.
Yeah.
Jay?
I don't know. That metric doesn't sway me.
It's a really good question.
Jeremy Roenick is top 100, and we're not saying, to get him in the Hall of Fame.
No, but I would have him in the Hall of Fame if it's me. But I thought JR was a very unique player. I look at Backstrom, and you're right, he was a very good playmaker for sure. I think when you look at the Sedin's overall numbers, the fact that they're in gives Backstrom a really good chance. Now, he didn't have the individual hardware that they had. So that's the one thing that's missing. I think for sure, without question, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'll say no to first ballot. I think over time he might get in, but you know what? He played with Ovechkin, and like I like Backstrom, and I look at Nick Backstrom, and I'm like, what's the significant difference between Backstrom and Phil Kessel? Right? Phil Kessel was a better goal scorer. Backstrom, obviously, a better playmaker. You know, Phil was a pretty big, significant player on a few cup-winning teams. Right? I think it'll be an interesting debate between the two. It's funny how some people perceive Phil that, you know, he wasn't a six-pack and, you know, he's kind of a aloof guy. His teammates loved him, though. And so it's an interesting one because those guys, they kind of came up at the same time, right? Their careers intertwined for a long time, very similar in production. So I don't have him as a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think he'll be in the discussion.
So let me give you some guys that are in the top 100 that are not in. 47th, Jeremy Roenick. 49th, Bernie Nichols. 50th, Vincent Dampus. 52nd, Patrick Marleau, who, by the way, hot take, I don't think is a Hall of Famer. 53, Rod Brindamore. I mean, go down the list. There's tons of guys that are way higher up than Nicholas Backstrom that won't end up going in and won't even really receive consideration. But I think what stands out is the playmaking two-way ability. Like he was really a dominant force for a while.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what our friend Paul Paduti has, Frank, at Adjusted Hockey on Twitter. PPS has him as a borderline candidate for the Hall of Fame. So there you go. All right, next one I got for you. You guys kind of hit on it already, but 12 points in their first 10 games. Are you buying or selling on the Ducks hitting 80 points this year, Frank? 58 last year, so 22-point jump.
I'm going to sell.
Think at some point the cold snap's coming?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the team that started 1-4 is much closer to the team that we're ultimately going to see. I think they're going to compete. They're going to work harder. They're probably going to have 17 more points, 15 more points, and they're going to show some sign of market improvement. But I think at the end of the day, they are what they are.
Okay.
They need 68 points in their final 72 games. Easy stuff for me. I will say they get 80 points for sure. I think the Ducks, I've watched a lot of their games. They've been entertained. They play hard. They match the personality of their coach, and I think they have some skill. And Dostal has given them some goaltending. I'm not saying he's going to be 920 all year, but if he's even 910, they'll get to 80 points for sure.
Last one I got for you guys. Frank, you talked about David Pastrnak, his hot start, maybe not getting talked about quite enough. How about Quinn Hughes and the start he's off to in Vancouver, the start to his career as well? Quinn Hughes, Norris chances. You buying or selling on that, Jason?
Well, at the start of the season, he was my choice for the Norris, so of course I'm buying. I will go all day. I thought Quinn Hughes was going to have a breakout season. He's going to put up the points. If you looked at Vancouver's record under Rick Tocchet, that's why I picked the Canucks to make the playoffs. And that's why I tied it in. I thought the Canucks could make the playoffs. And then if you make the playoffs, you got to, and I know that Carlson, although Carlson's numbers were ridiculous, you know, he won it without making the playoffs. Usually it helps your bunch. Not as much lately, I guess, because Fox and Carlson both did it. But I have Quinn Hughes. I think he's going to be right up there. I think he'll be, I'll be stunned if Quinn Hughes isn't a finalist. I'll say that. Right. Like you never know, you know, Cale Makar could do some Cale Makar type things, right? Adam Fox is pretty good. So
Cale Makar still north of a point per game.
Yeah. And both of them are, don't they both, I think they have identical stats, right? 11 and 9. So, you know, it'll be hard for Quinn Hughes to kind of skate out from the shadow of Cale Makar, but he's a definite legit contender.
Frank?
Totally agree. By the way, I feel pretty good about that Thatcher Demko Vezina pick too. He's been pretty elite to start. And if the Canucks make the playoffs, he should be in the conversation. But Quinn Hughes, for my money, outside of maybe Makar, who does it in a different way, the puck is on his stick. Quinn Hughes almost the whole game, it feels like. And what's most impressive about it is that it's on his stick and off of it. And if you dig deep into the numbers, he's one of the league leaders in passes completed and all those different metrics, the different types of stats that really are difference makers that show you how much of the game he controls.
Yeah. All right, guys, there you go. That's a wrap on this week's edition of Buy or Sell, delivered by Dorion.
It's funny you mentioned, Frank. There are certain picks early that I've liked. I've obviously hated my Boston pick, but Jake Ottinger for the Vezina, he's off to an excellent start. Same with Demko, Quinn Hughes. It's funny, like probably not talked about as much. And I know he missed 2 games, but Connor McDavid, by his lofty standards, has had a rather quiet start to the regular season, which is the main reason why I expect. Like, I don't put Edmonton in Calgary's category. Edmonton, I think, in the month of November, well, it's not hard. They'll be much better than they were in October because they were terrible. But I think, like, Edmonton's ready for takeoff here because they've actually had way more individual players playing below their standards, even including McDavid. I'm not saying McDavid's playing bad because his standard is so much higher than most players, but by his standards, it was a rather pedestrian October. And I think you'll see 97 have a few of those games. Like, you haven't really seen him in highlight packs this year. You know what? Like, it's kind of been a quiet year for him. And really the Oilers offensively, like their top 6 combined is averaging a goal a game less through the first 8 games this year than they did last year. Last year they had 23 goals at top 6. This year they have 16. Like, even some of their best guys aren't producing. And, there's others around the league. Like Johnny Gaudreau doesn't have a goal yet in Columbus. What about Seattle? Beniers and Wenberg, Frank. Your top 2 centers are both goalless through 10 games.
It's the McDavid one is really interesting to me because you obviously had the injury, but even before the injury, he wasn't doing McDavid-like things. Like, you weren't seeing that charge up the ice, putting defensemen on their heels, leading the rush. Like, that stuff just wasn't happening. And so I had kind of poked around a little bit and asked, hey, is the injury that he ultimately ended up missing time for, was that lingering beforehand? And the answer I got was no. So I don't have a way to explain it, but it's very odd in that when you think back to last year and how off Austin Matthews was all year and how he didn't look like a factor at times, he still scored 40, but I kind of have the same feeling from McDavid these first, handful of games of the year. Something is just not right.
That could be fair. I wonder if, while they couldn't say for sure it was lingering, like if you have the tight hip flex or something, like it just might, you don't know it's there, right? But it's just, and 3% can be a big difference, even for the elite players. Like McDavid's only, and I say this facetiously, a 1.5 point per game player. Right? Like most guys would be doing cartwheels to be that. But when you're a guy who hovers around 1.8, right, that can be the difference of 3-4% in health. So, their power play is a little bit below where they were, 5% actually, where they were the last few years. I expect that to increase here. And really just their 5-on-5 play. The big thing, Frank, is if they keep the Nugent, Hopkins, Kane, Hyman line together, which I would if I was Jay Woodcroft, that allows you to play Draisaitl with McDavid. And then you have 2 solid lines. That's you can do that for a month and be fine. And then you can always separate the 2 if you need them. But Kane and Hyman are both legit. Those guys have been first line wingers at times. If they're on your second line, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, by the way, I just looked it up because I was curious in the meantime, since we were talking. The league leader in completed passes this season is not Quinn Hughes. It's another defenseman, and we probably wouldn't guess. Shea Theodore.
Oh, yeah.
430 completed passes in all situations. Quinn Hughes second at 408. The league average, so he's 408 completed passes. The league average so far this season is 130. That's bananas.
Who's in the top 10?
So it's Theodore, Quinn Hughes, Erik Karlsson, Adam Fox, Rasmus Dahlin, Drew Doughty, Vince Dunn, Victor Hedman, Noah Hannafin, Miro Heiskanen.
Wow.
Cale Makar is 13th. Mo Seider 14th. Some surprising names here. Cam York 18th.
Yeah.
Sean Dursey, 15th.
That plays a lot, right? So you got to play a lot, I think, to be on that list for sure. So that helps. But that's like to be that much higher than everyone else just shows you, hey, guys who play well, but are also, you know what, completing even 10-foot passes consistently, Frank, all the time, I think is an underrated skill.
Here's another unreal Quinn Hughes stat, okay? Puck carries in all situations. So the definition of a puck carry is any path where the puck possessor travels 6+ feet. Quinn Hughes has 16 more puck carries than any other player in the league. He has 412 puck carries this season of 6 or more feet. And the league average is 119.
Yeah. Now, is there any forwards in that? Is it all D-men still?
Clayton Keller is 9th.
Okay.
He's the only forward.
No, hey, Quinn Hughes, man. Like I watched Vancouver 4 times already this year. And when he gets the puck, you can't get the puck. Like he's so mobile and he's so quick. Like watch Quinn Hughes, and how one of my favorite parts of watching Quinn Hughes is when he goes in back and gets the puck, there's a forechecker on him. Watch his turns coming away from the forechecker. Like
so deft.
He blows away from them. It's almost, and like these are elite players in the league. Like they're the best players in the world, and he skates away from them like it's no big deal. So it's fun to watch.
He's also 6th in the league in all puck recoveries, which is crazy. There's something, it's not just the skill with him. I think when you're mentioning something like being under pressure, it's also the ability to, it's evade, but it's confidence that allows you to do that, to be able to see the game and be a step ahead of where someone's coming at you, and the confidence to pull it off. Like that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. Frank, have a good weekend. We will chat with you on Monday.
Thank you for watching the DFO Rundown. Hit the subscribe button to never miss a show. And for more, visit dailyfaceoff.com.